Another issue making the headlines this week was the allegations of sexism within the Labor Party and the forced resignation of the ALP's New South Wales General Secretary, Jamie Clements. Rebecca, are both parties just as bad as each other?
Well, I think there's no doubt sexism exists everywhere in society, but I think what's important is the approach that you take. I was a bit shocked, really, at this. I think with Jamie Clements, on the one hand, obviously, whoever is the Secretary General, the General Secretary, I should say, of the New South Wales Labor Party, that's a highly political, highly factionalised appointment. I think his removal, he was undone by his enemies. Frankly, what he was actually accused of, I thought there was insufficient evidence. I mean, we had two people in a closed room with completely contradictory accounts of what happened and no way of establishing the truth of the matter. So you can imagine that if that were to apply in every workplace, somebody could simply make an allegation about somebody else and, you know, imagine if it were reversed. Imagine if a man said, oh, this woman tried to kiss me, now I want her sacked, or I want her to be forced to resign. It would be in an absurd situation. But of course, what's really happening here is a big factional game. I do think it's important, though, to preserve the concept of natural justice, a fair hearing, and I think sometimes our responses are a bit over the top.
Simon Banks, so how do you make the handling of this particular incident this week, and also claims that there is a culture that limits the way that women are able to join and participate in the Labor Party, just for instance?
Yeah, look, that absolutely has to be addressed. Look, Rebecca does make a very good point in all of these processes, which there does need to be due process. Simply because an allegation is made doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. What actually happened in this case, which she may not be aware about, was that a separate report was commissioned which involved, for example, a senior barrister, an SC, who came in and had a look at the culture within the New South Wales Party head office. That report came back to the party just before Christmas, and that said that there was a wider cultural problem within that office and how it was functioning. The New South Wales executive, as I understand it, was going to be looking at that early in this new year anyway. It really couldn't resolve the matter of the direct allegation in relation to Mr Clements, in part because it was subject to a police investigation and court processes, which made it much more difficult to directly deal with. But once that matter was disposed of, I think the party more generally was in a position to address some of those wider cultural issues, and that's, I think, the main reason why Mr Clements has gone. But it puts into that broader context, as you've said, the real importance in these sort of things is where you have a problem, it's very important to investigate it and get to the bottom of it. And as we've seen with some other incidents, unfortunately the Prime Minister hasn't called an investigation into why the photograph of the public servant was distributed and who distributed it to the media. As many people have noted, that is probably even more serious than the original allegation that was made against Jamie Briggs. We really do have to get to the bottom of these things. We have to root them out. They occur in all organisations, but they require very thorough processes and not leaving any stone unturned.
Oh, look, Simon, I absolutely agree with you about the broader culture of sexism, and Christina Keneally, a former Premier of New South Wales, said that, and I've observed it myself, so I have no doubt, and I think what you say is true. I simply wanted to make that point about natural justice.
I agree.
But
I agree.
More broadly, I think that, you know, this thing about Jamie Briggs, the photograph, I think we have to be very careful. I mean, this photo was a photo that was taken, that was to show, didn't make anyone look in a poor light. There was nothing wrong with the photo, and indeed the things that Jamie has said to have done are not things that are in any sense illegal, or that even could be termed as harassment. I mean, you know, to say that somebody stood too closely to you. As a former diplomat, I can tell you, you deal with an awful lot of people with different cultural practices all over the world, and you know, something like somebody standing a bit too close, I think you can say to them, or say to their staffer, as she did, look, you're standing a bit close to me. I think that should be the end of the matter. I mean, if somebody told me I had piercing eyes, I'd think, nice.
But how do you feel if someone tried to kiss you on the neck?
Can I say sorry, Rebecca? I don't think we should be condoning that behaviour. I mean, a group of senior ministers looked at what Mr Briggs did and determined that it was inappropriate. We don't know all of the circumstances around that, so we can't comment. I don't think trying to diminish that behaviour really does the public interest any good. I think it's very important, and I think this is one of the things why this has become a matter of sort of water cooler conversation around the country, is that this stuff does happen in every part of our society, in every workplace, and it's really important that leaders set very strong standards about the conduct that's appropriate and not, if we're going to really root these sorts of things out. Because at the end of the day, it diminishes the ability of women to participate in our society on an equal basis, and that causes far more damage than simply trying to sweep an individual allegation under the carpet.
Look, Simon, I suppose we just have to disagree on this, but trying to kiss or kissing somebody on the cheek, he says he kissed her on, I do it every day of the week, you know, and I don't think that it's sexist
Rebecca,
or harassment.
You really shouldn't try and diminish the seriousness of the
I don't think you should tell me what I think, you know. Women don't like being told by men how to think, so perhaps we'll agree to disagree.
That's appalling. That is, that is an
don't
appalling
play the outrage
statement.
card. Come on, Simon.
Oh, look, seriously, you are diminishing, like senior ministers looked at this and you are trying to laugh off this conduct as somehow not being serious. Look, Mr Briggs himself ultimately accepted his conduct was inappropriate, and that's why he resigned, and you shouldn't laugh it off. That's really not acceptable.
I'm not laughing it off, I'm laughing at you.
Well, you were laughing it off, Rebecca, and that is not acceptable.
I'm the woman here, so I'm telling you what
I think.
Okay,
so therefore you're right and I'm wrong.
No,
fantastic.
I'm just allowed to have a point of view that's different to yours.
Of course you're entitled to have a point of view, but I'm entitled to point out that I think your opinion is wrong, and it's that attitude, whether it's held by a man or a woman, that perpetrates and persists sexism within our society. And I think you really need to have a good think about this.
All right, well, Simon Banks and Rebecca Weisser, we've left it on a very pointed note here. I do thank you, though, for both sharing your opinions this morning. Thank you. Simon Banks in Canberra and Rebecca Weisser here in Sydney.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lovely to be here.
Always good to have a fiery news commentator segment first thing on a Saturday morning.